I'd like to turn it over to Jamie Gleason, Capture's Director of Undergraduate Initiatives and a member of your community. Jamie?
Thanks, Nappy. It's good to be with you today, and I'm certainly excited about the next few days. The opportunity to present at Innovate is truly an honor, and even more so, it's an honor to just have our guests give us their time. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and kind of why I'm here. As the Director of Undergraduate Initiatives, what that means is that within Capture, I kind of form the nexus between product and sales and fulfillment and try to work all those together and understand what's happening in the market. But prior to coming to Capture, I was able to be in charge of 2 admissions offices here in the Philadelphia area where I live. And personally, I find these to be relevant. Personally, I'm also a farmer and a fixer at heart, 2 terms that I feel like are directly applicable to the enrollment management world that we live in. So it's an honor to be with you today, to be with all of you today, and I'm excited for what the next few days hold. And I think that we lost Nappy, so I'm going to go right into this.
I'm right here.
Okay.
I realized today more than 50% of the attendees probably don't know who we are at Capture. So I wanted to spend 1 minute to share with you who we are. At Capture, we have one mission. And we have a mission because we're trying to solve the most important problem, the fit between the institution and the student. It's one of the most important decisions an individual is going to make, has one of the biggest impacts on one's life, and we have to get it right. Is this the right institution for me as a student? And conversely, for the institution, is this the right student for my institution? And when we get that right, what happens? Well, not only does the student progress, but our yield improves. Our first-year student retention improves. Our retention, our 4-year graduation rate improves. And not only that, we hopefully have successful alumni. We at Capture execute our mission by focusing on 3 areas. 1, a behavioral intelligence platform, a software platform that combines marketing automation with predictive analytics to support the entire enrollment decision journey. Because the engagement and giving someone information that's relevant to them should be based upon them and their behavior. And furthermore, supported by a series of solutions, whether it's procured via Capture, or maybe you're doing something via social networks, but it's plugging that into that behavioral intelligence platform so you can incorporate that into the data set and maximize every marketing engagement. And lastly, managed by a team of experts. I'm humbled to say, from my account executive team, where 50% of them have a terminal degree in their field of education, to our data scientists, to our communication specialists, the best of the best, who are all motivated and driven on our mission. The fit between the student and the institution, executed through these 3 pillars. This is Capture, and thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. And the topic that we're going to handle is massive, right? We all understand that over the last few months, we have gone through and endured some very interesting times. So we're going to talk about 4 tenets to the future forward as Capture sees it. The 4 tenets are listed here in front of you. And because we're going to probably run out of time, I'm going to go right into the next slide and talk through the React. And the good news about React is that for all of us, we have been here, right? This is the world in which we've lived over the last few days, or the last few months. We have seen things happen that many of us never imagined would have to happen. We've decentralized our offices. We've worked with our admissions teams being remote. We have moved our accepted student days to an online format. Our models have been disrupted in a way that is unprecedented. Yet we've still determined that they are the best plumb line for what we need and how we evaluate students. And we've also seen an age of digital dependency that has been unlike any other. For the students the prospects that we're going after, the digital natives in the funnel. Like for many, this has been a very interesting season where some didn't get to graduate from their high school as they intended. And for the institutions, we've seen the digitally reluctant move to platforms to complete the semester that was in front of them. The response that Capture has had has been unbelievable. We've been able to leverage behavioral insights as a result of these changes and as a product of our iteration. And because of that, we have literally been able to update millions of or hundreds of campaigns for our partners, impacting thousands of impressions in order to get the message out that things are different and that there's a change, and be able to communicate that to our students. We've watched.
Jamie,
yes.
good question. Of the behavioral insights, which one would you say was the most interesting that you noticed of the change between 2019 and 2020?
Well, how much time do you have?
Okay.
Just kidding.
Ask me for a friend.
I would say this. We have been able to watch this very large trough of activity in an aggregated format and see how admitted students and applications are over-responding above last year. And we're going to get into that a little bit more, but it's been a very interesting study about behavior and where those students are and at what level. The good news about React for everyone out there, and you get to sigh a breath of relief, is that we have potentially gone through some of the hardest part already. We have proverbially ripped off the Band-Aid to this change that is out there. And as that change and reaction was happening, what we've seen happen, and you've all seen this, is this larger narrative start to unfold, a bigger picture taking shape. While we might be tempted to think, oh, this is an anomaly, this might not be a long-lasting reality, the truth is this is a reality that has an opportunity for everyone in the industry. We get to wrap our hands around it. And the next 3 tenets that we're going to cover are going to be incremental on how we do that and where we go in this process. So we've covered React, and now we're going to talk through the reconnection process. Oh, I lost my mouse. Pardon me 1 second.
It's easy to lose a mouse in a field, but go on.
It is. And as a farmer, I can appreciate that.
That's of course.
I call this section Prospects in Process because this is a very interesting time. And this is our current paradigm, right? Many of you who are out there have come to this 3-day session time with us in order to understand more about what's happening in the industry. The enrollment cycle today is still extraordinarily tentative. We have many, many questions that remain, and those questions are not just ours to own. They are the questions that our students have. They're wondering about the fall semester. They're wondering about the distance of the college options that they have on their list. They have questions about online, gap year, when the end time will come, and what is going to happen forward. How will this end in 4 years? What will the labor market look like? All of these questions are culminating during these few months of the summer. And over the last few months, and currently right now, I think is kind of the hot spot. In reality, what we're seeing here is that the markets are shifting before our eyes, and we have to respond to that. So what does that response look like? How do we, in an analytical sense, turn what we see in data points and happenings into tactical responses? And that's a great question. That is, in fact, one of the things that we want to disclose and discuss over the next few days. But in truth, Capture has a beautiful opportunity. We've been able to, as the previous graph showed, we've been able to watch what that student behavior looks like, not just in an aggregated format as we would see in Google Analytics, but in a very granular geo market type of way where we can actually see these students are moving from here to here, and this funnel level is moving this way and not responding. We've been able to implement and leverage the model scores that were in place prior to COVID and understand what are the implications of not having accepted student day on campus. We've been able to see that. And ultimately, we've been able to push that conversion to yield and assist with that conversion to yield with our partners. Our behavioral intelligence platform, in short, responds to the shifts in real time. It's iterative and it moves when we need it to move. But that reconnection process, I would be remiss to just say that the previous few points met everyone's need. I know that there are folks out there who are listening today who really came because they want to understand what are the tangible takeaways that I can put into practice from what is happening in the market. Well, here they are. This is my uber practical farmer Jamie slide about reconnection. The reality is what we're seeing happen when it comes to the upper end of the funnel. The app.
Is this available in the 90-day almanac by Jamie?
I actually haven't published that yet. That will be a self-publish of 2021. Should life get less busy? I'm not sure yet, though. I'm thinking about it.
Understood.
What we're seeing happen in the funnel is that applicants and admits, as compared to last year for our partners, are actually 50% more active on websites. That means there's 50% more of those types of students in the pipeline and responding to the messaging that we're putting out there. And likewise, the top of the funnel is trending toward a larger mass than we've seen in years past. So what does this mean? What are the reconnection tips that you'd leave me with, Jamie? How do I respond to this? Well, there's a link at the bottom that is a little bit of a insight into that. But let me give 2 quick points. First of all, we've all read the survey results that surmise that students who are potentially looking at a further distance might be rethinking that decision. What I would encourage you to do is redefine local. And I'm going to air quote that because I live in Philadelphia, but I grew up in upstate New York where it's very different. So 100 miles in Philadelphia is very different than 100 miles in Watertown, New York. So understand and take a look at your early season local prospects. Maybe they're inquiries, maybe they're app starts, maybe they're apps who didn't complete. Take a look at those groups and reach back out. Figure out who didn't move forward, who came to campus, and what is happening with them right now. They very well might be the audience that's on your website looking for a new opportunity, or at the very least, assessing whether or not the opportunity that they have selected is the opportunity that they want to stick with for the fall. Secondly, I would encourage you to take a look at your transfer strategy. Transfers have had a double whammy this year. I was listening to a professional the other day who said, we won't know the true impact of the NACAC changes because of the pandemic. And that is a very real truth. However, that does not curb the opportunities that we have to go into that market and understand that there are puzzle pieces that can fit into our puzzle. Take a look at your programs on campus and find underrepresented programs that are transfer friendly. And maybe it's just a very small slice of that non-matriculating audience that you bring in from fall 18 and fall 19 that are interested in those programs, and reach out to them and understand that they might be interested in looking at their completion institution, and it might be yours. The next tenet of our future forward together is to Reenergize. And let me just talk through time and space here a little bit. I've been talking a little bit. React had to do with the past. Reconnect has to do with the present. And Reenergize and Restore are really future oriented. I want to make certain that I really emphasize that I deeply understand the pressures that you out there are facing. As a former director of admissions, being a chief enrollment officer, I can understand that these changes are unnerving. And while we need to account for them in the short term of the next 90 days, the onus is on us to really understand what are the future implications of what's happening right now. And let me just highlight a few of these items. We all know that the limitations of search are there. The College Board and ACT have not delivered tests for a few months, and for a few months forward, they won't be, which has made a very significant vacuum of name availability for your pools. Markets are shifting before our eyes, and we always understand that economic distress impacts how enrollment happens and also impacts things like discount rate and other items that are related to that. The audience that we're talking to, the institutions that we work at, are very much in a period of uncertainty. And your job, in many cases, the enrollment management office's job, is to move that uncertainty to a more certain, to certain. And what we want to do in the next couple of slides is really just introduce like what that would look like. And it really, what I want to impress most of all is the need to account for these changes, this process of re-energizing, this thinking forward in a way that we've never done it before. In many ways, I like to say that enrollment management is often summarized by the aggregation of historic tools on top of each other, which is not a bad thing. That is not a negative statement. That's actually the truth about many things. But the pandemic that we've faced, the last few months that we've been through, and now the social unrest that we're seeing in our country, this is an opportunity for us to really evaluate what matters. How do we create a system within our institution that is viable, that is stable, and that is sustainable for the future? These are extraordinary times, and I don't want to discount those. But what we want to do is recognize that this new normal, this success, is measured ultimately by the fiscal responsibility that you will demonstrate, along with the measurement that needs to happen in the pipeline that you are dealing with. Capture as a company has a commitment to be innovative and to change as the markets are changing and understand. But beyond that, it's to really see institutions forward. You know, the next 2 years to 5 years are a sea change that is happening within the industry. And the insights that we have been able to gain in the short amount of time over the last 90 days from the millions of impressions that we've seen, those have given us insight into what the future will look like. So here we are. We are in the midst of this. We have the opportunity to look at the past, to impact the current with the items that we've learned and the traffic that we've seen and the data insights that we have. But beyond that, we have an ability to impact the future of our institutions, to re-energize the pipeline, and ultimately to move to a point of restoration that sees our institutions through to something potentially that they've never seen before.
I want to thank you, Jamie. And Jamie and I want Restore is a culmination of the three areas. And we want to start off by saying we've invested thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a variety of initiatives comprising of our communications teams, of our marketing teams, of our admissions teams, in order for us to build this funnel to identify the right students. And they include hundreds of assets. And in the end, these assets, just for marketing dollars alone, average to about $1,200 per enrolled student. To recruit a student on average, another study that was published from another vendor in the space is $2,357. That's the median, but that obviously ranges between whether you're a nonprofit, private institution, or a public institution, or for-profit, but those dollars are staggering. And what's staggering is the level of effort that we invest, right, in all of our artifacts, in all the different departments, for us to find that right student. I'd like to challenge you in thinking, okay, now, one, do an assessment as you think about that slide that we just had up, where it shows the aggregation of all of those assets. First and foremost, we must need on the next slide is to invest in a way to measure each of the assets. And secondly, have an equation point where each asset understands its interdependency with one another. This now creates you the ability to have an integrated result, to understand, one, was this worth it? And two, what was the impact to my institution? Both the fiscal impact, but there's obviously the time impact, the different departments that were involved. And that's everything from, we send out email communications, right? We might be using Slate. We might be using a vendor to create it. We're now creating banner ads, and we have social networking and LinkedIn and Facebook and TikTok. And I should even do the flossy, though I'm not very good at the flossy. think about all of this, but did we ever say from the TikTok or the people that went to the TikTok, did we find through Facebook, and was that through the lookalike? And from that lookalike, did their parents touch upon the parent newsletter that we sent out when they were a junior? Not everything that can be measured should be measured. And I think the quote from Albert Einstein's an important one. So step one is, where are you spending the greatest amount of time and dollars? And use that as your foundation for the entities you're going to measure. This is going to be critical because the recommendation from us and our community, and I say as a community, from the hundreds of partners we represent, you will want 3 years to do such an assessment. This is how we use today into an opportunity. So when we go to the next slide, I want to leave you with a few equations to think about and why are they important. To us, Restore is not only understanding the investment that we're making, why we're making that investment, and doesn't align with the institution, but establishes the next precedent that we want to work with each of our partners and encourage people to work independently of us, is to say, let us assess a full funnel attribution of every single asset and effort that we have invested in, and was it worth it? And this creates very difficult answers, but they're the right answers, and they're what we've been charged with. Furthermore, in doing a full funnel attribution and being able to assess, then you have a foundation that you can build upon to say, how does this now impact my first year student retention? And what are the modalities and the assets that I can leverage? This is us as enrollment leaders taking the helm, that we deserve because of what we're involved in. When someone's unknown, to when they become discovered, to when they apply, enroll, and become part of our community, well, we have all this rich information, and we can apply it to beyond. And that's probably going to be a discussion for this fall. But to go back to now thinking about our investment and worthy investment, there are a number of ROI equations, return on investment equations. One will hear. I'd like to leave you with two that are really easy and kind of cool to build off of. The first is net tuition ROI. Why do I think this is so interesting? Because one, we want to use metrics that we can validate and justify, and each of our institutions are able to do this. So we take upon the number of enrolled students times the net tuition minus our spend. And I use the word spend in a generic sense because this then allows you the appropriate segmentation. Is it spend by total recruitment dollars, spend by marketing dollars? So now we have that partnership with our marketing and comms team and the admissions office. Sometimes we are in separate organizations. And then make sure that when you separate that, your denominator is the spend that you had in your numerator. That's going to give you a net tuition and ROI. What's the important thing is, what's your multiplier? And there are different grades of multipliers, and you want to think about it per program. Because some programs, we recognize the multiplier will be lower, but the long-term investment for our organization is of significant value. Could be for a variety of other reasons. It could tie into a graduate program or other types of programs that we need to grow. The other, and I think is a really fascinating one, is what's the cost per student? So you heard me talk about, a marketing cost per student, which is distinctly different than a recruitment cost per student. But we want to look at not only enrolled, but then your institution marketing spend per student. So the average is right now about a little over $700. On average, nonprofit institutions are at $1,200. Public institutions are at $185. Again, this will still vary by program. And then when you take that and you look at your total expenditure, this will now give you your cost per student. Why do I like these two equations as a way for us as we think about going forward, as we think about our way to restore? Because we also have to be able to validate and justify our investment to our own stakeholders, to our CFO, to our president, to our board of trustees. And then these two equations can then enable us to say, from this overarching equation, let us now go through each of our modalities, and through those modalities, layer in a pivot of by every stage of the enrollment funnel. this is sexier than Justin Timberlake. I know you don't think so, but it is awesome. Jamie, back to you.
Thanks, Nappy. And now we all have really good insight as to what Nappy thinks about at the end of the day. He talks about ROI. And in truth, what we love is to be able to optimize the resources that are available to our partners. We want to make the best use of all of those things. So here's the takeaway, right? Here's the walk away slide. When you understand like the four main objectives of what we have to cover and conquer this week, here are the things we want you to understand. The reaction that we've all had, this is in flight. This has happened. Well, we are beyond this, but there is a path in front of us. There is an onus on us to move the ball forward at each of our institutions in order to both have short-term gains and a long-term plan. So to reconnect, I encourage you to proactively engage with transfers and those early cycle prospects who haven't moved forward. Pick out a small group, try a beta or a pilot, and understand like what is the impact, and operate in short sprints so that you can effectively measure what's happening to those groups. Additionally, in re-energizing our institutions, our goal is to pave a path to sustainability. What does that look like in an era where the search market is changing and where academic programs might be in question? I think Nappy hit the nail on the head when he implored us to take a look at 3 years worth of traffic. Like understand how is the number for search students changing, and how is that going to impact the later on period, the future that's in front of us. And equally as important is to take a look at your program analysis and understand, are these programs growing or are they stagnant, and how can the labor market and will the labor market have implications onto that. And Nappy, you want to grab the fourth one for us?
I mean, thanks for letting me grab the fourth one. I think thanks, you're so kind. With anything, you know my passion regarding ROI and establishing the 4 formulas. It's critical in every way. And when you combine all the, together, regardless of the formula, it's the same thing to the react. We'd be remiss not to say we've invested a lot of time to adjust a strategy. Yeah. And, and to think about, many of us have extended our, enrollment, our application deadlines. Well, what's wrong with extending it into next year, right? What's wrong with maybe having different application deadlines for different programs?
Yeah.
Right? Recognizing the population that we're dealing with, they might have constraints on their end, right? This is not saying, well, gosh, we did this because of COVID. We're doing this because, we made ourselves more accessible. And yes, there are operational contingencies we need to think about as an institution, but that to me is the exciting part.
Yeah.